Hey there, everybody. Tamer Shama here of RotoExperts.com with your Week 17 starts and sits at the quarterback position. Before I get into starts and sits at quarterback for the last weekend of the regular season, let's take a look at Week 16 and see how I did with my picks at quarterback last weekend. And unlike my running back picks, my quarterback picks were definitely better. I had two starts for you last week. The first one was David Garrard. He had a big week against the Washington Redskins, even though he had a couple of picks in the game. He threw for a touchdown, he rushed for a touchdown, and had very close to 300 yards passing in that game. So a very good week for David Garrard. I also said that Tim Tebow would have a good week last week, and he did. Actually, a little better than I thought he would. He had some rushing yards. He rushed for a touchdown, threw for a couple of touchdowns, had over 300 yards passing. Really a tremendous week for Tim Tebow against the Houston Texans. So I was right on with my two starts. My one sit, I was a little off with, though, with a little bit of an asterisk. Eli Manning was my one sit, and statistically, he had a good game. He had close to, or actually a little over 300 yards passing in that game. Did have two touchdowns, but he did throw for 4 interceptions, which dragged his stats down a little bit. So overall, not a great week for Eli Manning, but definitely starter worthy. So I'll mark that one down as a loss. But still 2-1 last week. So let's see if I can do a clean sweep this week with my starts and sits. And obviously this is a different week, just like with the running backs, quarterbacks, same situation. So it's going to be some strange picks in here, but still picks that you definitely want to consider going into the last weekend of the regular season. My first start for Week 17 is actually a start I had for Week 16, and that's David Garrard. He's had some juicy matchups here towards the end of the season. Last week it was the Redskins. This week he goes one better and has the Houston Texans, who he did very well against in his last start back a few weeks ago. That miraculous Hail Mary game that was a big win for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Had a big game there. I think he's going to do the same thing again this week. No reason to think why he wouldn't. It's a big game for Jacksonville, obviously. If they win this game and Indianapolis loses their game to Tennessee, Jacksonville gets the division and gets into the playoffs. So obviously a big game for Jacksonville. Both of those games are also going to be played at the same time, so it's not like Jacksonville is going to go into their game knowing that they're already out of the playoffs and possibly not really be up for the game. I think they're going to be very much into this game, and I think he's going to have a big game, David Garrard, in Houston. I think he'll be a guy you definitely want to start as a quarterback one for Week 17. My second start for Week 17 is Sam Bradford. He's going up against Seattle in Seattle. Obviously a strangely big game, Sunday night game. It's for the division. If the Seahawks win the game, it'll be a first time a 7-9 team in a non-strike year makes the playoffs. If St. Louis wins, thankfully we'll at least have an 8-8 team out of that division make the playoffs. But still a strange game, but nevertheless a very important game. And Bradford is going to be a big part of this game because he's going up against a very bad Seattle pass defense that's towards the bottom of the league in yards allowed per game. They've given up 31 touchdowns through the air, only 11 interceptions that they've picked off from opposing quarterbacks this year. So not a good pass defense. Bradford's going to have to throw the ball in this game to be effective. I think there's going to be some points put up in this game, and I think Bradford will have a good week. And also, when you consider guys like that for a start, you got to remember that a lot of guys that usually would be starts are not going to be starts next week. So if Bradford gets moved up a few pegs because he's a guy that's actually going to be playing for something and he's going to be able to put up stats for the whole game. Now that kind of segues into my sit, my one sit, and then a couple other guys you want to consider sitting as well. My one main sit is Tom Brady. He's going up against the Miami Dolphins at home in Week 17. And if you saw my running back video from earlier in the week, the New England Patriots have everything wrapped up at this point. They're the number 1 seed. They have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They really have nothing to play for. And I would be surprised after the Wes Welker injury from last year at the end of the season when the Patriots really didn't need to play Welker if they go out there and play their starters the entire game. I expect Brady to play a half in this game, and he might put up some good numbers in that half, but I don't think it's going to be good enough to want to start him for Week 17 for a championship week. So I would go ahead and sit Tom Brady in all leagues next week, as weird as that may sound with the season he's having, just given the circumstance. Another guy you definitely want to consider sitting is Matt Castle. He's in the same situation. They could move from a 3 to a 4 or from a 4 to a 3 in the position they're in right now. But still, they're pretty much locked into the same situation. They know they're going to play the 5 or the 6. They know they're going to have a home game, and they know they're not going to get a bye. So really nothing is changing for Kansas City. It's a big rivalry game for them against Oakland, but they would not be wise to play their starters the entire game. I would expect Brody Coyle to get some snaps in this game and play in the second half. So I don't think that Matt Castle is a good start in this game. He's a guy that I would definitely look to sit in all leagues as well. Mark Sanchez is another guy, not a guy you would usually look to start, but if you are in a deeper league that you might start him in, he's not a guy you want to start this week. The Jets have everything wrapped up. He's got some shoulder issues. He'll probably play a half and come out in the second half. So that's another guy that you definitely want to look to put on the bench for Week 17. So it's definitely a strange week in Week 17, but you definitely want to pay attention to the playoff situations and who's playing for what and who has something to play for, and that's going to really factor in big time with the decisions you make for your lineup, not only with the quarterbacks and with the running backs, but with all the positions that you're looking to fill and looking to start for Week 17. So that's the starts and sits at quarterback. That's going to be the last start and sit video I do for the fantasy football season. It's been a pleasure doing these videos all season long. Hopefully I've been able to help you out and get you to this week or to last week and get you to a fantasy championship. For all those that do have fantasy championship games this weekend, good luck to you. Hope you guys are able to go out with a bang and win your fantasy league. I will see you down the road with some fantasy basketball and some fantasy baseball videos in 2011. Until then, everybody,